and converting between the metric system and the imperial system. So if you have a ruler and your ruler has centimeters and inches on there, look at your ruler and try to do a simple conversion. If you had 1 inch, how far is it? Okay, there's a big ruler. I don't even know what this is. Oh, from a travel agency. So on here, I can look at 1 inch, and then I'd have to try to imagine where it's going to be down here on the metric one, and I could do an estimate. Some rulers, right? How could I do an even better estimate? Maybe I take out 2 rulers, and then I measure 1 inch from one ruler exactly on the other one, and it's just a little bit more than 2.5 centimeters. Have you seen these symbols before? Right? That's like an equal sign that's all squiggly. What does that mean? Approximate. So I don't know for sure, because I was just looking at my ruler and doing a best guess. One of the things we're going to look at with this conversions is what is it exactly and when is it an approximation. So this is one symbol for approximation. Sometimes you'll see this, also an approximation symbol with a dot over top. So there's a couple of different ways to have the approximation symbol. On your formula sheet, which one is it? Squiggles or a dot? Looks like I got squiggles on there. Okay? So you'll notice on your formula sheet, some things are approximations and some things are exact. And that's going to be important to know the difference between. Oh, here they have the dot. So your textbook, because I stole this picture out of your textbook is using the dot over the top of the equal sign. Your formula sheet has the squiggly brackets. Squiggly equals. Squiggles? Maybe? I don't know. I don't know what they probably have an official name, but I can't think of it right now. Some of these you will use a lot, and some of them you won't use very much. So here we go. Here's approximations. So we have that 1 inch, approximately 2.5 centimeters. 1 foot is approximately 30 centimeters. 1 yard, so it's less than a meter thick, is approximately 90 centimeters. And 1 mile is approximately 1.6 kilometers. So if you run a mile, you've actually ran more than a kilometer. Now some of these are useful in sort of estimating, and some of them are hard to use. Like, I don't know how many times I'm going to use 1 millimeter is 4/100ths of an inch. Okay, and the decimals sort of make it a little bit trickier. I find more often these conversions that are bigger numbers, like I would rather use the 1 foot is 30 centimeters rather than 1 foot is 0.3 meters, even though it's the same thing. But you're going to find that some of them you're going to like a little bit more than others. Here are the exact ones. These ones are important. In fact, I think if you're going to memorize one, one inch is exactly 2.54 centimeters. And on your formula sheet, that has the equal sign. So anytime you want something exact, you're going to have to use these ones. Anytime you want an approximation, you're going to have to use these ones. So just for fun, I am curious for 1 mile equals how many kilometers exactly? This is going to be a little bit tricky because I have an approximation. I know that it's approximately 1.6. These are the things that I have for exact measurements. Now on your formula sheet, we do have a way, like I can change to yards. On your formula sheet, 1 mile is how many yards? 1,760. Okay? And the yards lets me change exactly to centimeters. So I have 1,760 yards. Should I have more or less centimeters? I should have more. So will I multiply or will I divide? I'm going to multiply. So I'm going to take that 1760 and I'm going to multiply by 91.44. And I get a big number, 160,934.4 centimeters. Whew. Now I know that 1 kilometer is how many centimeters? And I think sometimes in this one, like remember last time we did it, we counted up how many times we went for our zeros and then figured out the number. But I feel like maybe this time I'll take my time and I'm just going to go to meters first. How many centimeters in a meter? 100. That's probably something you have memorized better than how many centimeters in a kilometer. Because usually we don't quickly go from centimeters to kilometers. If I know that 1 meter is 100 centimeters, I can go from centimeters to meters. Do you multiply or do you divide? Divide. And dividing by 100 is 2 zeros. This we can do in our head by just moving the decimal place over 2 places. And I know that 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. So now if I want to change what I have in meters to kilometers, I would have to divide by 1,000. That we can do as well without a calculator. It's just moving the decimal place 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And we just figured out an exact amount. I'll zoom so we can see the whole page. I'll write it in blue. $1.609344. Does 1.6 seem like a good estimate? Yes, it's not bad at all. If we wanted to be more accurate, 1.61 would be a better estimate than 1.6. And if we wanted to be more accurate, 1.609 would be a better estimate than 1.61. But if we wanted to be exact, we just figured out our exact conversion. The only thing on your formula sheet for exact conversion is going back to these two. So if we think about, I wanted to find an exact conversion from miles to kilometers, I had to do some work. First, I changed my miles into yards, and then I could change my yards using this one into centimeters. Then when I had centimeters, I was like, well, I want kilometers. It felt like too big of a jump to go from centimeters to kilometers all at once, so I took my time. I was like, well, it's easy to go to meters first. I just divide by 100. And then meters to kilometers wasn't too bad. I divided by 1,000. And since I knew my estimate was 1.6, when I got my final answer is 1.609, I'm pretty confident that I have it exact and I'm right. Okay? So these are things that we want to do while we're doing our math. We want to not only do the math, but each time we're doing it, sort of think to yourself, does this make sense to me? And try to have it make sense to you. And it's okay if it's like, ooh, this is confusing for me right now. But trying to make sense of it is going to help you a lot. All right, so here's our first question that we're going to do. Canadian football field is approximately 59 meters wide. What is the measurement to the nearest foot? And here it says to approximate first, then find the exact value. Now, when doing approximations, and I'm just going to grab a formula sheet here. When doing your approximations, you have some choice. We have meters, and we want to change to feet. So I go to my formula sheet, and first of all, I check if there's any relationship between meters and feet. And I have this one. Oh, I like this. And then I also have this one, which I'm going to change color. And maybe I'll just add a title here. We're doing our approximation. So anytime you are using one of the conversions with the approximation sign, your answer is not going to be exact. It's going to be an approximation. So first, if you have 59 meters, and I'm writing this in black because I'm going to use the black conversion. If 1 meter is 3.25 feet, and I have 59 of them, should I multiply or should I divide in this situation? Multiply, because we should get more of them, right? And we get 191. Oh. And the reason the dot or the squiggle brackets is good is because you are going to do this often. You're going to start a question, what if I just write an equal sign? This is technically wrong because it's not perfectly equal. So you can either do, sometimes I do this, I add the squiggles after, or you can add the dot after. But you have to realize when you're approximating, it needs to have the appropriate sign. Okay, 191.75. Then you go to your friend and your friend said, oh, I decided to use this one. 1 foot is approximately 0.3 meters. So then 59 meters, and this time I'm already thinking about it, is how many feet? In this case, we're going to have to divide. So I go 59 on my calculator divided by 0.3, and I get 196.6 repeating. Now, do you know that if a number is repeating, you can put a bar over top of it? Okay? This is an approximation already. I don't mind if you round it, perfectly fine. It's already an approximation. If we round it again, it's not like it's more or less of an approximation. Those two numbers are quite a bit different. Sometimes that bothers us, because we did it 2 different ways. If this was a test and I was asking you to approximate, both those answers would get full marks. Because they're both right based on the approximations. But it tells us that when you have an approximation, it is just that. It is not exact. So now in green, we're going to figure out this exactly. So if we're going to figure out this exactly, we have to use one of the measurements that's exact. And there's only two. We have to either use that 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters, or we have to use that 1 yard is 91.44 centimeters. And they're listed on your formula sheet as exact. I'm going to put a box around this one, because this is the one that I like to use. I know it seems easier to memorize. I would memorize that one if I were you, because it's going to be useful for making conversions. And we want to change 59 meters exactly into feet. Sorry, not inches. Okay? And I'm going to write out the idea and see if the idea makes sense to you. Sometimes we get the idea first of what we want to do in our head, and if we have the idea, then doing the math along the way will make sense. But if we just try to see the math along the way and we don't have the idea, it's easy to get lost. I want to go from meters to feet. I'm going to use centimeters and inches. So I'm going to start with meters and put an arrow, then I'm going to go to centimeters. That seems like something I could do easily for conversions. Then, since this is the only one that I'm going to use for an exact value, then I can go from centimeters to inches. And once I have inches, I can go from inches to feet. This is the idea. Here's our idea. So first of all, 59 meters is how many centimeters? I know that 1 meter is 100 centimeters. So I have 5,900 centimeters. Then 5,900 centimeters, I know that 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. If 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters, does it make sense that when I calculate this, I should have less of them? The number here, they're equal, since 1 inch is 2.5. If I have 2 inches, I'd have 5 centimeters about. If I have 4 inches, about 10 centimeters. Centimeters is always going to be the bigger number when you're comparing the two. So if I'm comparing the two and this is the bigger number, does it make sense that I would like to divide to get the smaller number? If I take my calculator, 5,900 divided by 2.54, and 232.83464. Oh my goodness. When getting an exact value, we can't round because then it's no longer exact anymore. So we have to keep all of the decimal places that show up on our calculator. And now we can take this 2322.83464 inches and we can change it to feet. And we know that 1 foot is 12 inches. So since you always have less feet than you do inches, we're going to take that number and divide again. So I go to my calculator, I divide by 12. And that would be the exact number. 193.56955538. This actually might be an approximation. It might have even more decimal places that you can't see on your calculator. We don't know that because we can't see how many more are there. You could go to a calculator on the computer that has more decimal places if you want it to be even further. But for our purposes, what I was really curious about is, since our estimates, we'll move up here, our estimates were quite different. I was wondering which one was more accurate, the black one or the blue one. And the exact one was 193.5. So it looks like the black one's a little bit closer, but the 193.5 is almost in the middle. Okay? It all depends what you're trying to do. Sometimes things need to be exact. Sometimes they don't have to be exact. Right? If you're cooking something, sometimes the recipe should be pretty exact, but sometimes it doesn't matter so much. Like if you're making a soup and you put a little bit extra carrot in there, it's not like, oh, that soup is going to be ruined. It just has a few more carrots. Doesn't really matter. But if you're making a recipe that has something like yeast and you don't put enough in, then all of a sudden your bread doesn't rise, and it does make a big difference on what that is. After meeting in Vancouver, BC, Ryan drove 114 kilometers north, and Winona drove 68 miles south. Who drove further and by how much? Again, we have to have an idea first. And if I got you all to do this question, I'd walk around and then I'd get excited because some of you would pick one idea and some of you would pick a different idea. And those ideas both are probably right for as far as comparing it. Some people might decide, well, it's hard to compare because one's in miles and one's in kilometers. So one group might decide, to change everything to kilometers. So they take their 68 miles, change that to kilometers, and unless a question says you need exact values, you're able to use the approximations. So what do we know? I would go to my formula sheet and I'd say, it tells me that 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers. So I could take that 68, I would multiply by 1.6. So that means that according to this, Ryan drove 5.2 kilometers more. So here's one strategy to do this question. You choose to change everything to kilometers. Strategy number 2, another group says, Let's change everything to miles. So that I need to figure out what $114 kilometers is in miles. And again, I know that 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers. So in this case, kilometers are always more, so I'm going to need to divide. This question is actually, in some cases, a nightmare for teachers. So this comes out to 71.25. So that means Ryan drove 71.25. And your answer here yes.
For the 114 kilometers, you're equals 71.25.
Thank you. Told you I was going to do that. We get so used to just writing equal signs, we're so used to it, that we're going to forget the approximation sign. Sometimes that's good once you're done, you're like, oh, I approximated, I should go back and check my work and just see if I remembered all of those details. And same thing here, look at that. These should be squiggly as well. Why is this a teacher nightmare? Oh, there's 2 different answers. And I think everything is going to be fine. And then someone else says, oh, Mr. JR, I didn't use this one. On my formula sheet, I did, where's my formula sheet? I used this one. I use that one. And that'll give another answer. And if you use that one on the green one, it'll get 4 different right answers for this one. Oh, wait a minute. And then there's things like, I know that we can use approximations and it's easier, but I don't like it. I want to use the exact numbers. So then they do all the math with that 1 yard is 91.44 centimeters and do it exactly and get a 5th answer. Oh. And then what can be like, if I really want to make my life miserable, I can make the 2 measurements so close that if you choose one thing, you get that Ryan drove more. But if you choose another conversion, the other person drove more. And then when people are finished their test or quiz, they're like, who did you get that drove more? And both people are right, but they got completely different answers. That would be like... So conversions, when we estimate, can be a little messy. I think I have one like this on your first quiz. And I had to figure out on the answer key all 4 different ways. And then somebody went and did the exact one, so I had to figure out the exact one as well. You just have to pick one way, right? In order to compare things, it's easier if you're dealing with the same unit. So in this question, you have to either change everything to kilometers or everything to miles. Either one of those would work. Some of you are getting ready for driver's ed, and then you're going to get your license, and you might have to convert how tall you are in feet and inches to what they're going to put on your license, because they're going to put centimeters. Here's my idea. Again, this is, right? If you need to map out your idea, that's a great strategy for a map. Some people are able to map out the idea and keep it in their head. I'm going to take the feet and inches and just make it inches. And because I know that 1 inch is exactly 2.54 centimeters, I can then go from inches to centimeters. Here's my idea. So first, I have to think, I have 5 feet, 7 inches. How much is that just in inches?
67.
67. And how do you come up with that 67?
You have to multiply by 12 because 1 foot is 12.
Right. So I'm going to put that off to the side. I know that 1 foot is 12 inches. So I'm going to put underneath this 5 feet. And that 5 feet, if I multiply 5 times 12, I get 60. So that 60 inches plus 7 more inches gives me 67 inches. And then I can take that 67 inches. Should we have more centimeters or less centimeters? More. So we're going to multiply 67 times 2.54, 170.18. So now I have a question for you to try on your own height. How tall are you in feet and inches? How tall are you in centimeters? You probably know one of them. Whichever one you know, you have to figure out the other one. If you don't know either of them, find someone who's the same height as you and ask them, how tall are you? Or measure it at home or something. Or make up what you think is your best guess. And whichever one you know, then you have to convert from that one to the other one. If you get that done, the next question as well, I'd like you to try on your own. And once you're done both of those, there's a homework listed at the end.